Hello, and welcome to Best of the Rest. Normally, this is a show where we take a second look at a movie that was poorly received upon release and challenge ourselves to only talk about the things we like and what the movie does well. But this is a bonus episode that we like to call Best of the Best, where we take a look at a recently released hit movie, and we talk about that instead, because we just love talking about movies. And sometimes we talk about a movie that's very exciting. We decided to make a bonus episode about it. This week, this episode, we are talking about the 2025 Ryan Coogler film, Sinners. And this is going to be full of spoilers. If you have not seen the movie yet, we recommend you stop it right here and go see it. Maybe go see it twice. Go see it 5 times. And then come back and listen to this episode, because we will be talking about spoilers and everything happens in the movie and the ending, all that good stuff. And maybe more than most movies we've covered on our bonus series, this is one that I think you really want to see spoiler free. But I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Andrew Williams. Andrew, say something to the listeners, please.
Hello.
There he is. I'm excited to jump into this. At the time of this recording, I have seen this movie one time. I saw it yesterday. Left quite an impression. I'm excited to talk about it. Andrew, how many times have you seen this movie?
I have seen it twice.
And I think we were, discussing this a little bit before we record, but I think we both have plans to go back and see it again if possible, right?
Yeah, I've been meaning to see it a third time for a while now, but, between, my existential crisis and the general state of things and having to play hockey and stuff like that, I just really haven't had time to.
Those things tend to get in the way.
They do. But yeah, the hope is to see it in IMAX, because I saw it in Dolby the first time, which was really, really good. Dolby is AMC's
big screen format,
the best visual, best sound performance. I've always found it funny that they have these ads where directors will talk about how they intended the film to be seen, and it's always an ad for Dolby Vision. And they had one with Sean Levy talking about Deadpool and Wolverine, and he's like, when you see these colors and you see these things, I knew it needed to be seen in Dolby. And I was just like, of all the examples to use about vivid colors, I don't know that Deadpool and Wolverine is the example I would have gone with. It's like the MCU, don't get me wrong, it's been clowned to death, and I'm not clowning it, but just when we're talking about movies with bright, vivid color palettes.
We finally got the yellow spandex, Andrew. You got to see that yellow pop.
I get it. I get it, but I was just seems like this is an odd choice. I think Denis Villeneuve talked about Dune in that way, and it's stuff like that. But so Dolby is very, very good. But that's AMC's thing, and I know everybody has their own version of it. I know Cinemark has their own version, Regal has their own. They're all basically the same thing. But IMAX is where I want to go next, just because I've heard the shifting aspect ratios, things like that. But there's no true IMAX here, unfortunately. So I'm going to have to see about just settling for normal IMAX, or I have to drive to Indianapolis to see it. Maybe there's a real IMAX in Toronto, and when I'm in Toronto, I can try and go see Sinners. We'll see if it's still in theaters 2 months from now. Definitely still on IMAX screens. Yeah, definitely planning to see it again. I've already pre-ordered the steelbooks, pre-ordered the vinyls, waiting on the novelization.
I mean, I don't mean to put you on blast here or anything, but is it safe to say you have $150 worth of pre-ordered material for this movie?
Yeah, about that. The steelbook right now. I haven't the vinyls I had to pay for. The steelbook will pay when it ships. So the steelbook will probably drop in price a little bit, but the vinyls, that was, $45 a piece plus shipping and tax. So that was not cheap. But I'd been waiting. The minute I saw it, I was like, I need these soundtracks on vinyl. Because the rumor was they were going to do 2. They were going to do the score and they were going to do the songs. And I was like, I need both of these. I have to have both of them. And I've been waiting. And I was waiting and waiting and waiting, because I heard that Made by Mutant was going to do them. I just assumed Mondo wasn't going to do them anymore, but Made by Mutant. So I've been And then like I'd get an email from Made by Mutant. It would be like, new vinyl soundtrack, The Shrouds by David Cronenberg. And I was like, okay, no. And then it would be like, again, an announcement would be like, Dune 2 by Killian Ang. And I'm like, no. I want, get rid of all this. I don't want this. Where's the Sinner stuff? So they finally listed those, I think, on Friday. I pre-ordered both of them immediately. And then the Steelbook popped up on Amazon, so I pre-ordered that too. So, yeah, it's over 150 at this point.
All in. One last note before we jump into this. Typically, we have an edited podcast, but our bonus episodes are typically not edited, so I'm not going to say we're going to be particularly foul-mouthed, but I won't be scrubbing this episode to bleep anything out. Like, you know, on our normal episode, you would hear but in this episode, you would just hear funk. And a reason for that is I don't want to spend a lot of time editing these. I want to get these out as fast as possible. But that little stupid joke I just did, literally I just made more work myself. Now I got to edit that to make it funny. So I don't know why I do the things that I do. A wise man once told me, if you're not making more work for yourself, you're not podcasting. Truer words have never been spoken. All right, Andrew, let's dive into it. I think we've already let the cat out of the bag as far as we both really like this movie. I mean, we wouldn't be making this if we didn't. And we're kind of breaking an unspoken rule here by doing this episode at all, because I think all of our previous bonus episodes have released opening weekend of the movie. We like to get these out as soon as possible. Sinners has already been out for a full week. It's wrapping up its first full week, it's wrapping up its second weekend, I guess I should say. But you look at these numbers at the box office, people are still excited to go see this. People are still discovering it. And I just now got around to seeing it. So I felt like it was appropriate to go ahead and drop this one. Andrew, where do we start? I guess we start with the cast, huh? Like every episode, we're going to recognize
that box office. I do want to mention that box office.
You want to dive into those numbers here? Let's do it.
I really do, because it's kind of insane. Because last weekend was Easter weekend. So the total weekend, which would have been the 18th to the 21st. So I think they throw it. So the Thursday previews plus Monday, I think, is what they count. Yeah, so they count Monday, since Monday's the holiday for a lot of people. The total for that was $55,800,000. If you eliminate the Thursday previews, which is about $4 million, and you eliminate Monday, you end up with about, if you basically with the Thursday previews, which was about $3 or $4 million, and not Monday, you get $48,007,468. The total estimated for this weekend right now is $45 million, which is a drop of 6% weekend to weekend,
which is absolutely unheard of.
Insane.
Like in any era of box office, that is absurd.
That might be the lowest box office drop for a movie that made over $40 million in its first weekend ever. Ever. Now, if you remove those Thursday previews, it might actually be a little bit more. It did add a few theaters. It added 39 screens, or it added 39 theaters. So there were theaters that didn't show it last weekend that did show it this weekend. So your per theater average does drop a little bit. But the fact that even taking everything at face value, it dropped 6% is insane. That is absolutely unheard of. To be fair, even the most successful of movies, like take Avengers Endgame, from weekend 1 to weekend 2, was still a double-digit percentage drop. Not because people didn't still go and see it. And in that case, it was a lot because of that first weekend was so front-loaded that there's no amount of continued audience that's going to keep it going. But it is genuinely one of the lowest weekend-to-weekend drops for a movie. I think if you use the over 40 million, because there's plenty of like independent films that go in and just run forever that make the same amount largely every weekend, but it's small amounts. So for a movie of this scope to make that much money the first weekend and then effectively have no drop off the second weekend is kind of nuts. And there were new movies this weekend. Like, it's not like new stuff didn't come out. Another weird box office story of this weekend is Star Wars Episode 3 had its re-release and made like $20+ million. Like, wow. It's the highest grossing like re-release possibly ever for an the highest weekend for a re-release ever possibly. I had no idea. Like, I knew it was coming, but I didn't think it was going to be that much. But like, I saw Until Dawn on Thursday night, which woof. Hashtag PP. But I was shocked because like tons of Star Wars people were coming out of the theater. They had their Darth Vader popcorn buckets and their lightsabers, and I was like, oh, I guess this was kind of a big deal. And then Ben Affleck's The Accountant 2 also came out this weekend. So not the only reasons to say all that is not a weekend without new content and not a weekend without competition. And despite that, the movie had a week-to-week holdover, which is good for a lot of reasons. One, that just you want to see movies like this be successful. I don't know if I've mentioned it on the podcast, but there's been a lot of original movies this year that just have not really done super well. Stuff like Companion, which was kind of a weird drama, thriller, black comedy type thing. You had
Black Bag.
You had Drop. You had Novocaine, which is a fun like action comedy. Mickey 17, which is an adaptation,
original movies that are receiving critical, if not acclaim, approval.
General positive reception.
Does not translating to a box office, yeah.
Nobody's coming. And so it's kind of, it's still a holdover, I think, of just the general, when you sent the message. So people see a trailer for something like Novocaine, and they're like, oh, that looks fun, but they're like, I'll wait till it's on streaming, or I'll wait till it hits Netflix. Like, Sinners is thankfully seem to be becoming that thing where it's like, you need to go see this. Like, you can't pass on Sinners, which is true. I would suggest that you see it as soon as you can. But it's getting that effect that things like Spider-Man No Way Home had, or the Deadpool and Wolverine had, or the Top Gun Maverick kind of had, or Barbie or Oppenheimer, where it's like, oh, you don't want to wait to watch this. You want to see it now.
And it's just word of mouth about the movie's quality. Like, big reason I saw it, I mean, it's hard for me to get to theaters. People probably get sick of me saying this, but like when you have a little kid, you so much planning goes into a simple trip to the movie theater, so I don't get to go very often. But me and friend of the show, my wife, made it a point to go to the movies this weekend, and we wanted to see this, and a large part of it is from you, like, ridiculously praising this movie. It didn't spoil anything for me, but you were like, dude, I'm all in.
I didn't spoil it for you,
amazing. No. You didn't spoil anything for me.
I just want to make sure.
But like, it was beyond you being like, yeah, it was pretty good. It was like, I could tell the impact it had on you was above and beyond most movies, and that's kind of just the buzz about this movie. Is like, I've never seen anything like it. It's crazy original. Performances are insane. I mean, even without anybody spoiling stuff for you, it just has this buzz about it, this word of mouth, in a way that you just don't see anymore. And that 6% drop weekend to weekend is unheard of in any era. That's absolutely absurd. But this style of hit movie used to be much more common. So I don't think it's just about going to see the movie before it's spoiled for you. I think it's just hearing from people that you know and trust that it's good, snowballing. Because even movies like, I mean, even Titanic wasn't built on a huge opening weekend. That was built on staying in theaters for months at a time. My Big Fat Greek Wedding ended up becoming a hit movie.
Legs. It used to be all about legs.
The Sixth Sense,
all about staying power.
Yeah. And that's diminished for a number of reasons. Things go to streaming so fast. It's all about franchises at the box office. We don't need to break all that down here. Just highlighting how much of an anomaly this is, but in the best way possible.
And the one last thing I want to touch on with the box office, speaking of all that, what came out kind of before the movie came out too was that Ryan Coogler had a very unique deal for this movie too, which was that after 25 years, the rights revert to him. So in 25 years, the rights to this movie will revert to Ryan Coogler, and they will not stay with Warner Brothers. Now, this is possibly... So this is seen by many as a very big threat to the studio system, because the studios thrive on their back catalogs. That's part of their profitability, is being able to still profit off of these old movies decades later. So now Warner Brothers being in a situation where I'm sure they are not the most popular of options on the market, obviously cut this deal to get the movie, to get Coogler on board, to get him going, and to get him involved. And it worked. Obviously, it worked. He came to Warner Brothers and did this movie. But there's been a belief that there are those within the right groups that are not a fan of that deal, and they're kind of trying to discourage future people. One of the things that seemed to be kind of a weird trend is that after that opening weekend, which was 55 million plus, worldwide it was over 60, there were a lot of articles that were like, Sinners takes number one for the weekend, but, and would go on to talk about its profitability. There was this weird, like, asterisk thrown on every single article from the major trades, largely about how, yeah, it took number one, but, the movie's got a long way to go before it's going to be profitable. And it just was one too many articles for me to be like, it's a little strange. They all had to talk about the profitability of the movie and all of that. It was a very strange and, dare I say it, felt coordinated effort to really undercut the success of this movie. Now, is there a much more potential obvious reason for that? I'm sure that's part of it, but it's hard to not think that the studios would definitely want to discourage directors from trying to cut similar deals, because this effectively eliminates their back catalog, their ability to build a new back catalog. Because anything new, you'd have a director coming in and being like, well, cool, if it's an original thing that's mine, I want the rights back in 25 years, and they don't want to keep cutting that deal. So there was a lot of people that sounded like they had a vested interest in this movie, quote unquote, not being profitable, so that they could just go and be like, oh, we get that guy to have control and we let him get his rights back, but then the movie didn't make any money, so we're not going to do that again. But the fact that it has held that box office and is now sitting, the box office for this sits at about, the budget supposedly is around 90 to 100 million, and we're already, with this weekend's numbers, at 161 million. So this movie is going to be profitable in a big way, where, there was a point where, like, people weren't sure if this movie could make, like, 120 million total. And now it's at a point where the domestic alone in the first, like, 2.5 weeks, or possibly the first 3 weeks, is going to be that much. So,
and let's not forget the hundreds of dollars in pre-orders, people like you that are
like me,
that
are already there. But anyway, the point simply being that there's definitely a lot of external factors here that seem to be kind of working against the movie. So I am very happy to see that despite those efforts, the audiences are basically saying, nah, man, we're going to see this and it's awesome, because it is awesome. So it's good stuff.
I was gearing up to jump into this cast, but we should acknowledge Ryan Coogler here. Take a look at the creative team. It's written and directed by Ryan Coogler, who is a creator I enjoy, I think has very goodwill with tons of moviegoers. So he makes a name for himself with Fruitvale Station, which is I'm going to double check. I think it was a Fox Searchlight, an indie movie. This is what happened when we record live. Yeah. But it's a small budget movie starring Michael B. Jordan that receives tons of critical acclaim. A movie that I will admit I have not seen. Not sure if I will, just given the content. Seems like a very heavy watch about
a tough watch.
Black man that was killed by the police, the innocent black man gunned down by the police. So, I mean, where the movie's going. It sounds tough, but he is recognized as an up-and-coming voice, and he gets tapped to join a major franchise, which has kind of become the norm here in the aughts and the 2010s, and he directs Creed, writes and directs Creed, again with Michael B. Jordan. After that, gets pulled into the MCU, does Black Panther and Black Panther Wakanda Forever. So, other than Fruitvale Station, you've got 3 like blockbuster, like IP style movies. But it's weird to think of Sinners as like it's not his big break, it's his coming out party. What do you call this? Because like, you could always say like, oh, your movies are great, you're doing good stuff with like established IP, but like, what do you have to say? Like, this has nothing but Ryan Coogler's name, and Michael B. Jordan's name to like attract you to the project. So it's weird for this deep in his career to say something like Sinners is a coming out party, but that's kind of what it adds up to be, yeah.
Essentially, yeah, because Fruitvale Station, despite not being an IP, is still based off a true story. So this is Ryan Coogler's first, call it original blockbuster. It's the first movie he's making that's not an existing property. It's not based on a true story. maybe it is based on a true story. I don't know. But it's basically his first original blockbuster. That's kind of how it's been described. Is like it's not an IP. It's not the MCU. It's not Creed. Still kind of wild that he got Stallone to agree to Creed in the first place, but I love it because everything else aside, Creed was like really good. But I didn't know if that was something Stallone was going to go for, as far as like being
stepping aside.
Yeah, like kind of letting something else willingly take the spotlight. But everything he's done has been great. I think, and so I was definitely curious to kind of see what he could do, taking the 10 plus years of feature film experience he has. See, and that's kind of wild, is that in the modern system, it's been over 10 years into this man's career for him to do an original script. That, not to say that he's not writing all these other scripts, not to say that it doesn't take work, but like usually there's like an OG project somewhere in there. No, I don't think anybody's twisting his arm to do these. I think, and in a way, I think these projects all identify with him in a bigger way, especially the Marvel stuff, than they do with some other Marvel directors. Like I think he's one of those voices within Marvel that gets to stand out a little bit more than some others do. But it's kind of nuts that Fruitvale Station was 12 years ago, and this is now technically his first OG blockbuster. And so he's got 10 years of experience that he's built on all of these things that builds into this. And yeah.
And awesome. I had no idea Ryan Coogler had this in him, right? You hear about he's finally doing like his own original thing. It is a horror movie. It's a period piece, and it is, if not a musical, has strong musical elements. 3 things that I never saw a hint that he was interested in creating, and yet here it is, and he pulls it off. It is, it's, I don't know, it's exciting. I mean, what a voice. And we've talked about the box office success of this enough. I'm just thrilled that it's doing well. Like that we as a people are rewarding this content is incredible, because it doesn't happen enough. All right, Andrew, let's jump into this cast finally. Okay. Every episode we take it's because I made a point of saying I'm not going to edit this podcast that I'm having a hard time getting out the words that I say on every episode. Here we go. Every week, we recognize one person goes so far above and beyond the Call of Duty that they actually elevate the quality of the entire film with their performance, and we recognize that person by giving them the Mark Strong Award. There it is. Andrew, here's what I want to know. Who is getting your Mark Strong Award for Sinners?
Michael B. Jordan. Come on. Like he's the double star of the movie.
I'm go ahead and say I agree. Michael Jordan also getting my Mark Strong Award. Now, do you want to give it for Smoke and I'll do it for Stack, or the other way around?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure, fine. But what I like about this, obviously, it's a great set of performances. He plays twins in this movie, Smoke and Stack, that are World War I veterans that have returned to Mississippi after seemingly working for the Chicago Outfit up north. Al Capone's gang was called the Chicago Outfit. But possibly robbed a whole bunch of people on the way out.
I'd say it's made pretty clear that happened.
But they come back to Mississippi and they want to open up a juke joint, as they call it, for their people. And it's a very interesting set of performances, because they do kind of make them very different. Obviously, that makes it easy to kind of stylistically separate the two. One is much more solemn and serious and straightforward, whereas the other one's a lot more charismatic and smooth talking. So it does reach a point.
Smoke being the more stoic one, and Stack being the more
more charismatic.
Yeah.
More extroverted. That's the better word. But it is a really good set of but it gets to the point where you can't tell them apart, basically just from looking at them. Which can be fair, is because one is just kind of furrowed and stoic and the other one's not. But it is like the chemistry they have with the rest of the cast. One of the biggest things you talk about with movies is there's movies where they put together an ensemble cast and they're supposed to be this group that's known each other forever, and it just never feels like it. Like, it just doesn't feel like this group has this history. This group does, and I think it's a large part because of the chemistry that Michael B. Jordan has with basically all of them. And the variations of his roles. It all feels like there's a lived-in backstory to all of these characters. And it's really well done. The energy they both bring to it, all of it works. It's a fantastic set of performances in a movie where everybody's kind of doing a good performance. Everybody's stepping up and kind of doing exactly what they need to do. But in these cases, they're going above and beyond. And I mean, he should. He's having to play two characters. And even after the kind of big split in the movie happens, and it kind of the two characters kind of go different ways, they still are presented in different ways. They still get chances to really dive in, dig in, sink their teeth in, if you will. But to the characters and what they're going through, and it never stops gluing me to the screen. I kind of told you before we started recording, I think that before the vampires enter this movie, there's this whole story unfolding about these guys opening up this kind of juke joint, as they call it, but basically just a bar / club for the local community. And that story alone is compelling on its own. Just that story of these two kind of former, residents of the area that have come back and are now calling in all these old favors, using their business acumen, all their Chicago business stuff, working. All of that is still interesting on its own. And then this vampire thing gets kind of dropped on top of it. But the reason all of that works and I think is so interesting is simply because of the charisma of these performances and the work that Michael B. Jordan is putting in. So, yeah, fantastic work.
You talk about the chemistry of the cast, and it's great up and down. But I'm not joking. Michael B. Jordan has great chemistry with Michael B. Jordan. Which is absurd. So when these characters are introduced, Ryan Coogler is showing off with this shot where the camera slowly pans around the two of them, leaned up against a car. Stack rolls a cigarette, hands it to Smoke, who smokes it. So you have the same actor playing two characters interacting with each other, and the camera is moving, which even the most casual moviegoer is going to know that makes the shot much more complicated. You can't just draw a line down the middle. You've got to film it multiple times with the actor in both places, use some special effects to blend it together, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really showing off, like, look at this magic trick we're doing. But it's not long where I'll just speak for myself, I guess. I forget that I'm looking at the same actor playing two characters. I am so sold that these are two different characters. These are brothers that have chemistry and a relationship. Acting is reacting, and this man is acting with himself. I'm sure there's a stand-in for the scenes where he's talking to himself, but it's insane how good of a performance he gets out of himself and scenes he has with himself. I mean, there's a point you mentioned with the two characters split. We're spoiling everything this episode is what we do. Stack becomes a vampire, right? And then they are at odds with each other, and I'm sold on their interactions with each other, like in the heartbreak and like him mourning the loss of his brother when he thinks he's died. Like, and it's by that point in the movie, I've long since, maybe it's extreme to say I forgot that they're both Michael B. Jordan, but it's not front of mind. I'm not thinking about it. I'm not thinking about the insane amount of work that's going into creating this. Now that I've, finished the movie and looking back on it, wow, that's, you look at this budget that got up to some reports as much as $100 million in a movie that, yeah, it's got special effects, but it's got original sets. It was maybe 3 locations in this movie. There's the church, there's the town square, then of course the juke joint was in most of the movie. Not a huge cast, but it's the amount of special effects that has to go into making the Michael B. Jordan scenes work, I imagine, is a decent chunk of that budget. And I gotta admire Coogler's commitment to this, because there's really no reason they have to be identical twins. There's no reason you have to cast Michael B. Jordan. They could just be brothers close in age, and it's Michael B. Jordan or someone else. You could find twin actors. There's other ways you could have done it, but it was this is the story he wanted to tell, and he's that committed to it that he puts in all this extra work to bring it to life. And this is all about giving the Michael B. Jordan Award. Oh my goodness. This is all about giving the Mark Strong Award to Michael B. Jordan. So I've got to talk about just how good the performances are. Michael B. Jordan, one of those actors that I think, like I've said about actors before, is easy to take for granted because he's phenomenal. He's effortlessly phenomenal in everything that he's in. Possibly won a Mark Strong Award before. He's an alum of the show. We talked about him way back on Fant Four Stick. Maybe we gave the Mark Strong Award there. Who knows? No way to check. But certainly getting the Mark Strong Award here for the dual roles, Smoke and Stack. It's just great stuff. But Andrew, there's a lot of other people in this movie, and everyone is bringing it. And while I think Michael B. Jordan is the slam dunk Mark Strong Award winner, if there's anyone else I was considering, it's going to be Miles Caton? Caton? I should have looked up how to say Catton. As Preacher Boy, as they call him. His name is Sammy, but he is the cousin of the twins. He is musically inclined. He's a blues guitarist and singer that hasn't quite made a name for himself, but he is coming of age and he longs to get out of town and go play music to the world, and they are giving him kind of his first big break by letting him play in the juke joint on its opening night. So much of this movie is built around music, and so much of it is based on the performance of Miles himself, who is first and foremost a musician. This is essentially his first acting role. And I thought, like, oh, that's really smart. Like, the whole crux of this movie is that this is one of the best blues musicians, blues guitarists in the world. So that he found a great blues guitarist. But Andrew, he learned to play the guitar for this movie. I mean, he was a singer, and that's what he was known for, but he was not a guitarist. But there's plenty of shots where you can see it's actually him playing the guitar. Just the amount of just insanely talented. It's just wild. And so because music is such a strong element and he's actually making the music, actually singing, I was considering the Mark Strong Award, but Michael B. Jordan's a little too undeniable. But even beyond his musical abilities, there's nothing about Miles' performance where I go, oh yeah, I can tell it's your first movie. Yeah, you're just there for the music. He's great up and down. I mean, just as a young kid, kind of getting thrown into an adult world in more ways than one, absolutely crushes it. I loved this performance.
It's so good. And like you said, I was kind of like, oh man, what has this guy done before? And I was like, oh, nothing. He's done nothing before. But there's a naivety to the character, which I think, obviously, if you're kind of new to films, new to acting, whatever, that's going to help, because there's definitely fish out of water moments where you can tell that he's kind of just taking in what's happening around him. And I assume that's all on purpose, but he doesn't, like you said, there's never a moment where you're like, oh, yeah, there it is. Like, even when he's in, like, a scene with Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo, like, he doesn't seem out of place. He doesn't seem like he's not able to keep up. And the fact that he learned the guitar for this movie was kind of wild. It's just, he's really, really good. We'll talk more about scenes, but there's a scene that he is the anchor of that. It's that scene. Yeah. And it is unbelievable, something that I'm very excited to talk about. But yeah, this performance is great. I do want to shout out Buddy Guy taking on the role of Elder Sammy for the end of this movie.
So
Buddy
cool.
Guy is obviously a legendary blues guitarist of some repute. He actually has a club up here in Chicago that I don't know how often he's at it, but when they did that flash forward and we saw older Sammy, I was just like, man, and they said it was Chicago, and I saw his face. I was like, man, that looks like Buddy Guy. I was like, and the whole time I'm just like, man, is that just an actor, or is that just Buddy Guy? I couldn't put my finger on it. And then in the credits, it said like, and Buddy Guy. And I was like, it was, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But if you haven't heard Buddy Guy, he is, just like I said, he is a phenomenal blues guitar player, phenomenal musician. He's the guy that influences people like Eric Clapton and Jimi Hendrix and Jimmy Page and Keith Richards. And the irony is that he's still alive. But but he was, cutting his teeth in the late 40s, 50s. And so he's the influence for, if your favorite guitar player probably loves Buddy Guy, is I guess the best way to describe it. Buddy Guy himself doesn't necessarily have the fame or repute that he probably should, but the respect that he commands within the industry and within just the music world as a whole speaks for itself. Everybody
which is amazing, because it's not like Buddy Guy. I'm sure he's listed influences in interviews. It's not like he's the first person to ever pick up a guitar, but you look at what the music he was able to produce with the people available to him as an influence. It's absurd the skill he was able to display. Whereas anybody pick up a guitar today, you've got decades and decades of great guitarists to be influenced by, to dive into, and to learn from. So the fact that he was able to create the music he did with none of that, it's impressive on a level that is impossible to achieve anymore, right? Like you trace elements of rock and roll and blues back far enough, you get to a point where it's like, you get to the originators of it, and it's like, well, yeah, no one will ever be able to do that again. It's like my argument for why Michael Jordan will always be the greatest basketball player, because he elevated the entire sport, and no one can elevate it again.
Right.
You go back far enough, you see people that like created genres. Like, it's something you can't do anymore. It's incredible. So yeah, I gotta agree. Probably even still isn't as well known or respected as possibly should be, even though he's obviously a legend of the genre. And it was very cool to see him in the movie with the scars to match.
They did everything, and I just, it's that scene is. We'll talk about that scene again. I'll hold on. But
we'll get there.
I like it. Yeah.
Haley Steinfeld, who I'm not sure if I even knew was in the movie, is in the movie. She plays a character named Mary, who is an ex-lover of Stack. When the movie starts off, Smoke and Stack are returning to their southern town after being in Chicago for a period of 7 years. So most people have not seen them in a long period of time, including Mary. It would seem they didn't end on great terms. Stack seemed to slip away without notice, so she is understandably very upset with him, but clearly still in love with him. And it becomes very clear he still loves her as well, and they get to reunite. Her character does say at one point that she has a grandparent that's half black, because she's clearly welcomed in the black community in a way that most fair-skinned people, understandably, are not or don't wish to be. And that is actually true of Haley Steinfeld herself. Her own heritage involves a grandparent that is half black, which I thought was interesting. And I gotta wonder, like, which came first? Did he write this role and find someone to match up? Did he incorporate that into her character? I'm not sure, but either way, it's pretty cool. Haley Steinfeld, an incredibly talented person. She's probably like one of the best actors going, and doesn't quite get that recognition yet, but I think it's coming. I mean, most people probably know her from she's in the MCU now. She's what they used to call her, Hawkeye, Lady Hawkeye. I don't know if
Kate Bishop.
Okay,
She's
Kate
Hawkeye.
Bishop. I love her from a movie called Edge of 17, which is really good. True Grit, maybe the first thing that people saw her in of note, but she is just quietly building up this very impressive filmography and performances, and is also a crazy talented singer in her own right, which comes into play here. And she gets to play this character that is, again, sort of pinning Stack in his place and calling him out on all of his bullshit, and then they reunite. But also she gets turned into a vampire and seduces him for nefarious means, but then Stack gets turned and they are back on the same page and the same team. It's quite the journey the two of them go on. But her playing the character, there's such a clear, when she turns into a vampire, it's not like she's playing the same character, but with fangs. Like, there's a
difference. There's a change.
She turned on the sexuality. And yeah, there's a huge change in the character, which must have been a thrill to play, and she does it great. Haley Steinfeld, she's wonderful. Great stuff, Andrew.
didn't even mention Spider-Verse here once, man.
Great point. Yeah, she's Gwen Stacy in the Spider-Verse.
Gwen Stacy in the Spider-Verse. Yeah. It's also in Bumblebee, the the first genuinely great live-action Transformers movie. But
please don't cough or sneeze, Andrew. I'm not editing this podcast. People don't hear that.
That's fine.
Control yourself.
She also got a lot of repute after True Grit when she was, I think, in Pitch Perfect. She was one of Pitch Perfect sequels. Got a lot of attention for that too. But talented singer, has a song on the soundtrack for this. I don't think it's in the movie necessarily. Probably in the credits or something. But they put that to use here. But it's a great performance, like you said. And there's a stark turn when she gets turned into a vampire. Just a very unsettling scene where that happens too. But it's a great performance. I don't know that I remembered she was in the movie until I was watching it and she showed up on the screen. There was a point with this where like I kind of stopped watching stuff for it. Like I saw the original trailer a lot in theaters, but then I didn't see a whole lot more for it, and I kind of avoided it.
We probably could have talked about this earlier. Did you know it was specifically vampires in this movie when you first saw it?
I assumed it was vampires. The story and the general assumption on the movie is that it was vampires.
Okay.
And I'd heard the undead when it was in the original pitch, but the undead can mean lots of things. But the trailer definitely made it seem like vampires seemed to be the common bet, and I'm sure that if you paid more attention, it was confirmed somewhere that it was vampires, but I had assumed it was vampires.
Okay. It's hard to go back and remember what I didn't know, but I think based on the first trailer, I just knew it was supernatural and horror. But definitely by the time I was sitting in the theater to watch it, the cat was out of the bag. I knew it was vampires, which is fine. Doesn't ruin the experience. I was just kind of curious. I mean, this would have been a great movie to see completely blind. I mean, if you don't know that's coming, wow, it's gonna be wild.
I just saw The Shrouds yesterday, which is David Cronenberg's new movie, and I just knew David Cronenberg had a new movie because I saw that he was going to be in town at some screenings of it, and of course those were sold out, so I just went and watched a different one. And I had no knowledge of what that movie was beforehand. And then having seen it, I'm like, I haven't watched any of the trailers for it yet, but I don't know that the trailer would have given me any clue what that movie was about. So, because that movie is, it's very Cronenberg. It's very Cronenberg.
Do you want to spoil what it's about for people, or just would you just recommend
without giving away the whole plot? The premise is it's about a gentleman named I don't even remember what the guy's name was. Karsh. But he has developed a technology called he has an app and a company called Grave Tech. And what it does is they have specialized cemeteries where they wrap your deceased loved ones in this thing called a shroud that basically gives you a real-time view of their corpse as it decays.
Well, for what purpose?
You had no idea where I was going with that, did you?
I did not.
None. If for what purpose? For people that want to see their bodies of their loved ones decay slowly. All right. It is. And then one of his sites gets vandalized, and he's trying to figure out, but only some of the people got vandalized, so he's trying to crack the realization of, what's going on here. He's, there's a whole lot of different layers to it. Okay. It was fine.
Okay.
It's not top tier Cronenberg, but literally by the time, after the first 10 minutes when, who he is and what he does became apparent, I was just like, yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right for this. Yeah, this is on brand.
All right, and Smoke has a love interest as well, a wife, in fact, played by Wunmi Mosaku, plays the character Annie. And, man, I love this character. So the actor I'm familiar with, probably like most people, again, from the MCU. She is a TSA agent. I don't even know her name, but she's in Loki, and then she comes up again in Deadpool and Wolverine. But honestly, I didn't recognize her. It wasn't until after the movie where a friend of the show, my wife, was like, oh, there was 3 actors there from the MCU. I was like, yeah, it was Michael B. Jordan, and Haley Steinfeld. And she was like, no. That was the TSA agent. So that was cool. Love this character. She, I guess, technically does a lot of exposition, but it never feels like the movie is stopping its momentum to explain stuff. Because, one, it's vampires. Most of us know the deal already. But I think her ability to dole out that dialogue and information in character and without feeling unnatural is, you got to give her huge credit for that. So her character is, Andrew, you've seen it twice. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they ever use terms like voodoo or witchcraft or anything, but she is clearly familiar with the occult and with supernatural and spirits and the like. And as we learn in this movie, a lot of that stuff is true in their reality. She gives Smoke a protective necklace. I'm trying to remember what they call it, a mojo bag maybe, to protect him when he's off in Chicago. We learned that her and Smoke had a young child that passed away. We see their grave, and it seems to be one of the things that drove the two of them apart, dealing with that grief, and that is a huge element in her story. So this character gets to do a lot. Lover, grieving mother, vampire expert, educates people on how to kill and repel these things. Lots of great stuff. I guess, we'll continue to talk about it as we get to scenes, but this turns out, Andrew, this movie is just full of great performances. We were so confident giving the Mark Strong Award to Michael B. Jordan. I don't want to make it sound like other people weren't also bringing it, because they all were, including Woonmi herself.
She's fantastic in this. She's definitely a person. She's definitely meant as like the knowledge base. As things start going off the rails, they definitely establish that she's got these connections to the mystic. She has this mojo bag that she's given to Smoke that really is possibly the thing that's kept him alive through everything that he does. There's a very I'll talk about it in scenes, but there's a moment that hit me that I didn't catch the first time that I noticed the second time. That I'm sure a depth viewer would know it, but she's very, very good. Like you said, all that exposition that she has to provide, none of it feels forced. Because that sort of thing can feel like, just, here's all this information now. But the way they choose to relay that information throughout the film makes it not feel like you're just being spoken to for extended amounts of time, which is not a very cinematic thing. But it's great. This performance is great. Like I said, I didn't even realize she was in the MCU until I went back and was like, oh, you were in a movie last summer that made $1 billion. And I'm just not smart. That's the real truth, folks, is that I'm not smart. And just to be fair, I try not to pretend to be. But it's a great performance. Like I said, it can be tough to be that character that has like the knowledge, but by building that character into the group, giving that layer of lived-in sense, the chemistry with Smoke, obviously the chemistry with Michael B. Jordan. Who wouldn't have chemistry with Michael B. Jordan? But all of it just adds the character to the group, makes it feel natural. Like as these characters interact, there's this like you said, there's this built-in feeling that there's a history here between all of them, and it works. And her performance is no small part of that.
Omar Miller plays Cornbread. He is the bouncer at the juke joint, and one of the more comedic characters of the movie. Great comic relief. Omar Miller, help me out, Andrew. I immediately recognized this man, but most of his work, I know his voice work, so that wouldn't make any sense that I'm recognizing him. I'm not sure what I know him from, but fantastic addition to this movie, and we'll cover this kind of maybe. I haven't seen that movie in a very, very long time, but yeah, maybe it's stuck in my brain since then. But we'll cover this ground more when we get to scenes, I think. But this movie has everything, right? It's scary, it's funny, it's sexy, like it runs the gamut. But it effortlessly bounces between all of them. Yes, very horny movie. But he is absolutely hilarious, but in a way where it's not like, oh, it's one of Cornbread scenes, now it's a slapstick comedy. Like they all fit in the same universe so well. It's just masterwork by Coogler, some of his magic blending all that stuff. But I really enjoy this character. He's one of the first to get turned into a vampire, and he is still very funny when he's a vampire and still very charismatic. Gets a gnarly gunshot to the jaw, so his like half his face is exposed, like the teeth and stuff through his cheek. Great, good stuff.
Yeah, he's great. I actually, ironically enough, remember him from the first of the direct-to-video American Pie spinoffs because
Not where I know him from, but okay.
I don't remember why this was a movie that made its way into my house. I have
Is
no
that the
idea.
Naked Mile? What was the direct?
Band Camp. It was called Band
Okay.
Camp. About Stifler's younger brother that you had never seen to that point. I think the only character in it that recurred from the previous films was Eugene Levy. Um, and I think Chris Owen as the Shermanator. He now was like a counselor at their school or something. But he was just one of the campers, and I just remember him from that movie, which no one else does, I'm sure. But Miracle at Santa Ana, Sorcerer's Apprentice, there's The Lion of Judah, there's tons of stuff in there that he was in. So he was also Raphael in the Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles show that came out a few years ago. But many years ago now, I guess. But yeah, the performance here is like when he first picks him up, like again, you talk about the characters that just feels natural. When Stack comes to get him, they just immediately have a rapport that comes off. It just feels natural. It feels good. And then, like you said, even as the movie goes on and the character shifts his alliances and his allegiances, he never stops being there's through lines of the character that still come through, and he's still funny. And just the scene where like they kind of out him as the vampire is just really well done as a mixture of like the tenseness of one side and then him just presenting this entire other attitude on the other side. It works really well. Turns out this is just a really well made movie.
Turns out, Andrew. Turns out. In a heck of a cast. I mean, I'm looking through, sometimes we like to cover the main characters and then move on, but I feel like every one of these characters we need to dig into. Like Jamie Lawson as Pearline, who is a singer at the juke joint, and was it right to call her a love interest of Preacher Boy? Certainly someone that he is infatuated with, and turned out to be a two-way street after all. Even though she is married, but hey, the movie is called Sinners, and sin they do, Andrew. Fantastic performance, and like everyone in this movie is like multi-talented, right? Because she sings in this movie. It's incredible. It's great work, but sort of unlike Miles, she is. I don't know. I guess I don't know if she's an actor first or singer first, but she has done work in movies before this. I actually know her from The Batman, where she is the mayor incumbent. I can't remember if she wins the mayorship or she's just on the campaign trail, but at any rate, she plays the mayor character and factors in pretty heavily to the final act of that movie. Had no idea she could sing, because believe it or not, she doesn't sing in The Batman, but she does here. And incredible, very memorable performance, especially with like the stomping she does on the stage. But just great stuff, Andrew.
Yeah, it actually says nothing on her Wikipedia about being a singer. So, but yeah, she does appear in The Batman. She did reprise that role in The Penguin. Which is odd that she's like 27, which means that when The Batman came out, she was like 24 as this mayoral candidate of Gotham City, which just seems so crazy young for that. But hey, the future is now, folks. Also been in a couple of other things, was in How to Blow Up a Pipeline, which was a action thriller, which was based on a kind of book of the same name that was kind of written by some potential eco-terrorist groups that were trying to avert the climate crisis. She was also in The Woman King, which was a really badass action film starring Viola Davis as the leader of this like warrior woman tribe. And then she was in Till, which was the movie about Emmett Till, which is don't watch it if you don't want to be sad. But is also going to be in The Running Man, the Edgar Wright version of The Running Man, coming out later this year, which would be pretty cool. But I hear she's got a really good performance that I think she gives as this character as kind of Preacher Boy's love interest. Someone he kind of don't know if he does know this person, don't know if there's a history. It's implied, I guess, that there is, but again, comes off kind of very naturally, and she gets to be part of our kind of group that's opposing the vampires, and like you said, the performance that she gives, very, very good.
Delroy Lindo plays Delta
The man
Slim,
himself. The
sort
man
of a
himself.
blues legend in their Mississippi town, and alum of the show. We got to talk about him back on our Congo episode and his scene stealing moment there. I think the first thing I think
cake,
of,
folks.
I think the first thing I think of with him, and I probably said this on Congo, was Gone in 60 Seconds, where he is the police officer trying to hunt him down. A movie we will surely cover at some point on this podcast, but his line, a brother's love is just, for some reason, burdens my brain. Can't wait to talk about that performance even more. But just an actor that's been around forever, been in a million things. You know his face. This is my favorite performance of his that I've seen now. Absolutely incredible. I'm sort of okay, so like I know Haley Steinfeld can sing. I know obviously Miles can. I know that was actually Jamie singing. Is Delroy actually playing that harmonica and singing and the piano? Is he also musically inclined? I'm going to assume so based on the rest of this cast, but that is not something I know for sure. But I love this character. He is clearly an alcoholic, desperate for alcohol in this prohibition era. And alcohol they do give him. And his him drinking a lot plays into the movie in some pretty funny ways. Also bringing a lot of comic relief, just like our boy Omar was, and gets a real badass death scene and just a great character and great performance up and down. Andrew.
Yeah, this is just a really, really good performance. I thought it was funny. They did the Letterboxd top 4 with a lot of this cast, and they did Delroy. And the first 2 movies he gave were Malcolm X and Da 5 Bloods, which were both Spike Lee movies that he's in.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, I love a guy that walks up there and is like, all right, I got to give you a movie that I was in. But this is a great performance because there's this surface level to the character of just he's Delta Slim. He's a legendary blues musician, plays the piano, plays harmonica. I don't know that he does. I don't want to speak either way on whether or not he does or not. But there's this history to the character too. There's a scene, I mentioned the scene with Delroy Lindo, Stack, and Miles in the car, and he's talking about stuff that he's been through with his friends when they pass by a bunch of prisoners on the side of the road. And there's a pain and an anguish into the story he's telling, and he's trying so hard to just like keep it together and not let it break him. And it's just subtle. It's not very subtle, but just it's small moments like that where I was just like, man, there is some extreme acting chops on display. Like, and especially like I just think about this like for Miles, like if you're new to acting and you get dropped into the middle of this group, man, there is just so much to take in and learn from this group that's around you. It's got to be one of those experiences that like is immeasurable in its value of just like, you talk about like what director would you like to watch in like the peak of their, like what film would you like to have watched a director made type thing, like to just watch this movie being made. It's almost a candidate I would announce for that now, just because to be on this set and to watch the creative process of all of these people would have just been insane.
All right. Before we get to the vampires, I think there's just a couple more humans I want to touch on. Lee Jun Lee plays Grace Chow, and Yao plays Bo Chow, her husband. And Wikipedia just says Yao, but I Googled this. I tried to look more into this guy. Don't know much about him. Can't say I'm too familiar with either of them, but they play the Chows, which is a Chinese family that runs some shops in the middle of town. And not only based on actual way of life at the time, but an actual family from Mississippi that ran the shop. There was a whole like just kind of researching this movie, I found like a whole almost like mini documentary about this family. I haven't dug too much into it, so I don't want to speak too out of turn about it, but this in a way is a work of historical fiction. I mean, the fiction part is very obvious. These are all original characters, but clearly some of them based on some actual stories, at the very least way of life of the time that I think is very interesting. Okay, all that being said, I love this family. I love these characters. There's a very interesting dynamic at play in the town, the downtown, I guess, as it were, where they are running a shop that Smoke visits to hire them to create a sign and help with the party. And there's this big reveal where their daughter is sent to get the mom from the other shop, which is on the other side of the road where the white people shop. So you have a black side of town, a white side of town, and a Chinese family that has a shop on both sides, which is a very real dynamic of the time and just is a sort of understated moment in this movie that I find incredibly interesting. A lot of themes at play here. We can dive more into those later, but they are just kind of presented as a nice working family. And later in the movie, once her husband, Bo, is turned into a vampire, Grace maybe gets my favorite death in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we'll save it for scenes, pin in that, but great performances up and down, especially Lee Jun Lee as Grace. I mean, she gets a lot to do, from just being a happy wife and mom to being out for blood woman trying to protect her family. It's great stuff. Yep.
This is pair of performances, especially Grace, just really good, powerful stuff. And it's again, these small characters with this built-in history, and it all feels real. The pain and anguish the characters feel is all real, and it just comes off very, very good. And yeah, Grace's death we'll be coming back to that.
Yeah. All right, I want to wrap up this cast because I want to talk about the scenes of this movie, but let's touch on these vampires. You have Jack O'Connell as Remick, sort of our main vampire, as it were. He's the first one we're introduced to, and he creates most of the vampires we see throughout the movie, starting with...
He's really the only main vampire. Everybody else is pretty ancillary in the grand scheme of things. Or they're part of our main cast already. But, like, man, there's a charisma to this character that's just deeply unsettling. Like, everything he does, it's just deeply unsettling. There is a sinister edge to this performance that is just so understated, but it's like everything he's saying is right, but you just know. And it's not like obvious.
Yes.
But just subtle.
I hate to keep like teasing the future of this episode. We're talking about scenes, but there's times where he's talking and you're like, oh, I kind of get it. And then like you snap out of it, like, wait, he wants to kill everybody. Like, this isn't the guy I'm supposed to be like, but it's his charisma is very strong. It's a great way to put it. The first two people that he turns are, we have Lola Kirk playing Joan and Peter Germanis as Bert, which is just a couple old KKK people in town that get turned and are the first to sort of...
Those two, oddly, are musicians. They are primarily known as musicians.
Yes. I specifically wanted to highlight Peter Germanis just because I'm familiar with the band he's in, July Talk, which... this is going to sound braggy, I guess, but I saw Lit in concert. I mean, I've seen it a million times, but the most recent time I saw him, I got to hang out with the band a little bit, and the bassist in particular hung out with us and talked for a long time, and I was asking him about the music that he's into, and he said July Talk specifically. He's like, I'm obsessed with this band. He's like, I've seen him in concert a few times. He's like, I could probably go backstage if I don't know if they know who I am, but like I just like being there as a fan. And I've listened to them a lot since then, and they have a really cool dynamic with dual singers. There's a female singer and a male singer. And the male singer of that band is Peter in this movie. And just the way this movie is cast with, again, singers, musicians doing some acting, actors doing some singing, just incredibly talented people. It shows, it comes through. I mean, the way the music weaves in and out of this movie, I think the only way you could do it is to cast it like this. And it's really cool stuff.
Yeah, Jack especially. This performance, I had no real idea who Jack O'Connell was. I immediately was like, that wasn't Jerry O'Connell. That's just where my brain went originally, but he's
no relation as far as I can see.
None at all. And I was looking at his filmography, and there's just stuff where I'm like, I don't really know. Like, I did see Ferrari, so I guess he was in that. He will be in the upcoming 28 Years Later movies. Been in a bunch of television shows. Was on the show Skins, which is definitely led to quite a few actors making a jump. That's where Nicholas Hoult first cut his teeth. I think Dev Patel was on that show as well. Who else was I thinking of that was on that? Daniel Kaluuya. He was also there. So a lot of modern actors definitely cut their teeth on this British kind of teen comedy drama called Skins, and he was on that as well. But in this movie, Jack O'Connell he's fantastically cast as our lead villain, Remick. Creates this just sinister undertone to everything he does. But like you said, then he talks and you're like, oh, I get it. There's a line where he's standing at the door of the club with Bert and Lola, and they ask him, he's like, y'all clan? And he just goes, sir. Like, he's like offended that they asked him that. He's like just so upset. But like the way he says it, of just being like, but like he seems taken aback at like, how dare you accuse me of such a thing? But then you realize that it's like, it's almost that he's offended because he's like, what I'm going to do to you is so much worse. But like, it's this like, it's this weird moment where I'm just like, he's like, they would have just killed you. I'm going to kill you and make you serve me forever. Which, then he then tries to argue and present as like, we're just going to be a community and we're going to do this. And it's like, no, but it's still all about you, dude. Like it's just this really, really, really great performance that, and just really, really good. I loved his performance in this. We'll talk more about his big musical scene later, but just great, great stuff, top to bottom.
Okay, Andrew, let's jump into the scenes of this movie. I can't wait to break it down, and we're going to start right at the top with the best scene of the movie, or at least our personal favorite. So, Andrew, in your opinion, when is this movie firing on all cylinders? What is the best scene in Sinners?
It is Miles Canton's performance of I Lied to You that plays in the club that turns into this transcendent scene of music of the past, music of the future, and ultimately, intended or not, is the blaring beacon that attracts Remick and his group to this place and enamors Remick with this group. This is a scene that, first off, the first time I watched this in the theater, I was just entranced. I was like, what am I watching? Like, what in the world? Like, I couldn't put it into words. The idea of writing that down on paper, coming up with the notion of this scene, and then executing it, and having it all work, is almost Herculean in its scope. Because you write that down on paper. You literally write this down. It's like, so in 1932 in Mississippi, this blues guitar player is going to start singing a song about how he lies to his preacher father about playing guitar. During that scene, a dude dressed as Bootsy Collins is going to come in playing electric guitar, and you're going to see a DJ appear behind him, and then we're going to pan around the whole room, and you're going to have a girl twerking on one side while African drummers are over here, and then we bring in some traditional Far East musical concepts as well. Like, if I wrote that out, I would have like, whoa. Like, there's no way you're gonna tie this all together and make it work. There's no way.
And don't forget, Andrew, don't forget. And then the camera pans up. The building itself is on fire and burns down around them.
Burns down around, and like, it's just this insane. Like, any question that anybody had of like Ryan Coogler just being like a utilitarian filmmaker, or like not knowing what to, like, just being very functional, is gone now. Like, you can't tell me the man who conceived, wrote, and executed this is not a master of his craft. A master of his craft. He knows everything he needed to do this, and he pulled it off. And don't get me wrong, he had tons of help to do it. But conceptualizing this, putting it to paper, and then executing it in this way, all of these different, completely far away elements in some cases, and making it work top to bottom, it's unbelievable. It's an absolutely transcendent scene in this movie that establishes the power of Miles' music, the power of music in general, to reach not just backwards, but reach forwards. Like, that's the big thing, is he's not just reaching to the musical history of the past, he's reaching into the future and then showing that that ability that Miles has is the thing that Remick wants. Because that's what Remick is after. He doesn't really care about any of the rest of this. What he wants is Miles and his music. Because that's the thing that he can take for himself. And even if that's the only thing he takes, it's what he carries with him forward. Because you'll notice, Remick builds this whole group. But Remick's by himself when this movie starts. Now, is that because the Choctaw Vampire Hunters got rid of all the rest of them? I don't know. Or is it because eventually Remick didn't need them anymore? I'm
just going to put a pin in the Choctaw Vampire Hunters, because I want to come back to that.
We will. But point simply being that this scene has a functional purpose, and that it is how Remick is attracted to this site and so fueling the rest of our plot. But in that moment, Coogler puts all of his musical references and influences on display. He brings in all of these that, like I said, on paper should not work. None of this should work, but it does. And it comes together in a way that is just one of the most visually astounding things that I've ever watched. I've never seen a scene like this. And, you talk about, people will say that, like, oh, there's nothing new under the sun. Well, this one was under the moon, I guess. So it counts in that regard, I suppose. But this is the kind of scene that I watch, and it just makes me want to be like, is there even a smidgen of an idea that I have that I could do something with that would even be like 1/10 as interesting as that is? It's something that almost pulls at me to do that. But,
or maybe you have a wild idea like that, but could you build a movie around it that leads to this point to make it land?
Right.
I mean, that's the crazy part here.
Yeah.
Andrew,
Anyway.
I have to agree this is the best scene in the movie. I'm trying to, like, be contrarian and say it's this or that. There's tons of great scenes in this movie. We're going to talk about them, but this is the special moment. Like, this is it. This is the peak of the movie's powers right here. Yeah, it's incredible. The whole shot is a oneer in a way that's not like just there to show off. Like, it makes sense for this to be a oneer, slowly pan and walk around the room, because, like, it's all about taking in this moment. No cuts, no cutting away. It's all about this transcendent moment and letting you just sit in it. And we should say it is set up at the very, very, very beginning of the movie. The movie opens with an animated sequence and Annie's voice explaining this concept that there are some musicians in this world that when they create music so genuinely, so honestly, that they are connected with the spirits, not just of the past, but of the future as well. It explains that, and then we jump into the movie, and it's like, that's going to come into play later. So when this starts happening, we know exactly what's going to happen because it was set up. And I'm just kind of sitting here wondering, like, what if that animated sequence wasn't at the beginning? Would we, maybe this would be too big of an ask to just have this visuals and understand what's going on. That's probably why it had to be set up the way it does. But it works. It's wild that it pulls it off. I mean, you and I have both lamented to some degree the idea of opening your movie with like a wall of text, which is not what this does, but opening your movie with exposition. This movie does an interesting way with the animation. And I think just the payoff to it is so great that I don't want to say you forgive it like it was bad, but it justifies it. I think that's the word I'm looking for. Like it justifies that opening where you truly needed that for this to land. And the payoff is just so worth it that it all, yeah, it works.
It's a tough thing. And I've often said that wall of text openings can be very difficult just because reading is, not particularly cinematic, but obviously Star Wars has made a whole history of opening your movie with a literal wall of text. And starting with exposition can be a thing that it's like anything else. You can do it well. Generally speaking, I think it's not that. Now, would this movie have still unfolded as it did without that? Possibly. Because they do recant or they do recite or, repeat some of that information while Miles is performing. They talk about the reaching to the past, reaching to the future. But you throw that history in at the beginning, and I think it largely works. I don't have any issues with it here because The rest of the movie kind of quantifies it. Generally speaking, when there's a wall of text at the beginning of the movie, it feels more like, oh no, we found out this movie made no sense and we hope all of this helps. Like that's kind of feels like when you see a movie that opens with a giant ton of exposition, it's kind of like they finished editing it and they were like, oh, there's a whole bunch of stuff here that doesn't make any sense. So
or a studio note that doesn't have faith in the audience.
We should add voiceovers. Voiceovers are the key to everything. You add voiceovers to explain everything that's happening on screen. That definitely makes it better. But anyway, this scene is just unbelievable. It is, and it doesn't even have, like I said, it's important in getting the vampires to the establishment, but it still is just something where it's like to be able to put a scene like this in the middle of your Jim Crow era South vampire movie, just it's unbelievable. It's a fantastic, amazing thing.
I think I want to take this opportunity to talk about this movie is doing a lot, right? And it's almost to a point where there's like 3 separate movies colliding. But what's incredible about it is how well it synergizes. And I think this is a great example. So, like you said, it is this music and calling on these spirits that attracts the vampires to the joint, to the juke joint. But you don't need to do that. Like, it would be totally reasonable that the vampires are just nearby. There's a loud establishment that, you know, they hear the music and they go, oh, there's fresh blood there. And they go, you don't need this whole lore to draw them in. But, so the idea is, you know, these calls on these spirits, and then we learn about these vampires, and the way it's kind of broken down for us is that the soul of the person is still within that body, but it's trapped and it can't move on to the other side and be reunited with loved ones and ancestors. And so these vampires are like tortured by that. And this transcendent music is the only way they can reach across sort of that realm. And so now you have these movies colliding, the music thing and the vampire thing, like benefiting each other. You know what I mean? Like adding layers to each other. You know, because that's, as I'm watching the movie, I'm thinking like, well, that seems like they're going a long way to like, how did the vampires come across the juke joint? But with the again, the explanation of the soul and why they are lured to it and the appeal of it and the idea that they can gain that ability if they turn, Miles' character, it's these seemingly disparate ideas and stories, again, are complementing each other and blending together so well and strengthening one another. It's kind of it's the magic trick of Ryan Coogler. I mean, if you were, would you say there's like 3? If you want to break it down, there's the Southern gangster movie, there's the blues musical movie, and then like the supernatural vampire movie. Like those are kind of the 3 lanes that we're dancing with here. Oh yeah,
and the fact that they can all interchangeably, and at a certain point, vampires become the thing that becomes the only lane. But yeah, just the way they tie. And the thing is, you know, it's vampires, but this is all Remick, basically, because we don't really know how long Remick has been around. We know he's been around a long time because he's from Ireland, and he's dealt with his own version of oppression and things in Ireland, and that's one of the things that he tries to use to his advantage to lure people into his cause. It was really funny. When I saw it the second time at Alamo, I didn't get anybody doing the classic, you know, I don't really get it, but it feels important. But when I was leaving the theater with my friends, there was a group of guys that were leaving, and they were like, I just thought it was really interesting that the villain was Irish. Like, it feels like it's a deliberate choice, but, you know, I don't really understand what the choice is. And I just so desperately want to just be like, you're not familiar with, like, Irish history, like, at all, are you? Like if you read the Wikipedia for Irish history, you'll get a decent idea of why why they put an Irish guy as the villain.
Well, in somewhat defense of that person, I just want to say this. There's a lot going on thematically here where I don't think anyone is going to digest it 100% after one viewing. I don't think anybody's walking out of the theater and like, oh, this decision was made for this. This represents this. This person was cast for this. Like, there's a lot you can put together and a lot that you can theorize in multiple ways. It's a movie that you can, like, I've saw it a day ago. I've continued to chew on and sort of come to different conclusions. Like, I will, like, what do the vampires represent? It's not as simple as like the vampires are the KKK and they want to kill black people. Like, it's not that, but there's an element to that. There's an element to the vampires preaching love, and this is kind of going back to where like Remick almost like wins you over when he talks, but then you snap out of it because he's like, if we turn like, well, this is all love. Like, you join us. There's no racism. We are one people united in love. And that sounds appealing to the point we forget he wants to kill you. Like, he's preaching love, but wants to inflict violence. He wants murder. He wants to erase your individuality, your culture. And there's a lot you can chew on and read into with that.
I'm mostly just talking about the British oppression of the Irish, which was, I thought, a pretty straightforward thing to have with an Irish villain kind of preaching in this situation. From the Norman conquest of the 11th century, that was the invasion and occupation of England by an army in Ireland, by an army to occupy Ireland, and that lasted for like 700 years. That was dealt with cultural suppression. It dealt with a religious enforcement. So all of things that he mentions. So to me, it's a pretty straightforward explanation. Again, I don't think there's a lot of deep reasoning that you need to dive into as to why the villain is Irish. It's because there is an empathizing he makes with the plight of black people in America, but at the same time, he is weaponizing what he wants to still, like, you think about this, we'll talk about this scene because it's another one of my favorites. It's when they sing, it's when the group, which to this point starts with Remick, and he adds 2 people. And by this point, he's converted pretty much anybody who's left the club at this point. And he's got a group of 40 or 50 at this point. And they all sing Rocky Road to Dublin, which is an Irish kind of classic folk song. I don't know when it traces back to. It's only a couple hundred years, I think. But it's... that performance is interesting because Remick is in the center of it, but yet you see all of the people that he's brought into his cause are jumping and dancing and singing around to it, and some of them are showing flares of their own culture, but we're still singing his song, and we are embracing and adoring him for singing his song. So it's this flip of it, because while the British occupation of Ireland means that he empathizes with the treatment of black people in America, it's still all about him. And he's become the thing that he claims to hate, because as he brings these people into his group, he suppresses their culture. He takes from them what he wants. Because he doesn't want Miles. He wants Miles' songs, but only in the sense that Miles' songs are going to give him something he wants, which is to see those that have departed before and after him, or to see those that have left before and reach out to the family before him. He doesn't want his songs because he likes the songs. He wants the song because of what it can do for him.
Yeah,
and
the power.
So that's the power. So with Remick, you've got a very interesting villain based off of the British occupation of Ireland that has become the thing he claims to dislike. You see, the plight that he feels he himself has taken supersedes everything else. So the things that he wants and the community that he wants, that's his driving force. And that scene about Rocky Road to Dublin, which, as I told you, surprised it didn't set them all on fire, given how fire the song was. But it's a perfect encapsulation of that, because at that point, Stack is in the group. At that point, Cornbread's in the group. Haley Steinfeld's in the group. And they're all just going along and playing this song. And they're all into it. And then afterwards, they all like rush Remick, and they like, they all are like, oh my God, they worship this man at this point, which just again shows that it's not about anything but what Remick wants.
Is it safe to say that man you overheard walking out of the theater also wouldn't understand Hank Azaria's character in Mystery Men?
I think, to be fair, most people don't understand Hank Azaria's character in A Mystery Man. That's one I think you've got to... to me, the British occupation of Ireland is a much more common thing to be aware of than whatever Hank Azaria is talking about in Mystery Men.
A little deep cut there for, I don't know, a few people listening probably.
Anyway, that Rocky Road to Dublin scene, though, that version of the song is on the soundtrack. I've been jamming that like nonstop alongside with I Lied to You. They are both just unbelievably good.
Because of your pre-orders, going into this movie, I knew there was, the soundtrack and the score separately, and I wasn't committed to pre-ordering $90 worth. So I was like, I'll probably get one of them. I'll just see which one costs me more. And at different points throughout the movie, I'm like, oh, well, it's definitely the score. And then a few of the songs, I'm like, no, wait, it's got to be the soundtrack. And I'm don't tell a friend of the show my wife, but I'll probably just get both of them because it's too hard to choose between the two of them. But it is incredible. Quick question, Andrew. A little impromptu ask Andrew. Is this movie a musical?
Where did we land on Blues Brothers being a musical?
Did we discuss that? I don't remember. I can tell you my definition. I don't want to influence I have a definition of musical that I apply to this.
I would say your definition of musical would not apply to Sinners.
Okay, we discussed this already. Like it's whatever
I don't know
you break.
That we have, but I'm guessing it's not, because the performances in this movie are actual performances by people that are meant to be seen as performances.
Yeah, it gave me pause because of our favorite scene where you see all the spirits and stuff. But in the reality of this movie, that is happening. Like that is
right.
We're not suspending disbelief. We're visualizing something that we're told is happening. So I say it's not a musical, just has strong musical elements. But
by that definition, Blues Brothers would also not be a musical, because every bit of music in Blues Brothers is meant
happens in the universe. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Andrew. Some other stuff here that we like. Sorry guys. This is the part of doing an unedited podcast. You get to hear this part where I got to scroll through notes. I apologize about that.
I'm going to talk about it then. Vampires invade the barn, the sawmill, whatever. I'll talk about this. Oh no, I want to talk about something else first.
Let's go back.
Talk about a scene. It's very clearly meant to be an homage to The Thing, I think.
Okay, let's do that.
It's a scene where they're inside. At this point, the vampires are outside. They have to be invited back in. I guess they have to be invited every time they come in, because two that were in and left can't just come back in. But
would that be Stack? Because Stack is turned inside and leaves.
And Haley Steinfeld, because she comes back in, but then leaves.
Well, she's invited. Yeah, okay. Get invited every time. Okay,
but she leaves and can't come back in until they're all invited in. Anyway,
we just talked about this on the podcast recently, because I said like the whole vampire lore about how to be invited in. Oh, Renfield. Okay, we talked about even in this movie, the character of Annie gives us a breakdown. Well, I guess we do get around to explaining the have to be invited in. The thing that I don't think she says out loud, therefore I didn't clue into, was silver hurting vampires, which I always associate that with werewolves, but it
does cross over into vampires too, yeah.
Well, I always forget that, and it's not said to me. So like whenever he hits him with the guitar and the silver part of the guitar is in his head and like burns his face, I was like, that seems a little extreme. And again, it wasn't until afterwards where a friend of the show was like, oh yeah, it's silver. I was like, okay.
Dude, I want the werewolf version of this movie so bad. But
is that set on a planet with 30 moons, Andrew?
If I make it, it will. Which is why it won't be. So anyway, because Annie originally I think she calls them haints at first, which is just kind of another term for like.
I heard it.
Like
I heard
spirits. I think there's an N in there.
Haints. Okay.
Haint.
Well,
like haunt with an I instead of a U.
Okay, I got it.
Which I think is the form of the
at first, when she's using that word, I'm thinking, oh, it's that thing where like in a vampire movie, no one knows what vampires are. In a zombie movie, no one knows what zombies are. But then she's like, and this is the worst kind of them, a vampire. And like, yes, thank you for just calling them vampires.
Yeah. She finds out that they're not haints, they're vampires instead. Okay. She doesn't say like, she establishes they're different. Okay, haints are basically like evil ghost spirits. But then when they see, what is Haley Steinfeld's character's name?
Mary?
Mary and Stack turn, and like he shoots Mary with a bunch of bullets, and she gets back up, and then Stack comes back alive. That's when she's like, "Oh, these are vampires." And obviously, it's that kind of thing where like the lore clearly exists. I don't know for whatever reason, but there's a scene now that comes after that, and like Ryan Coogler was on a podcast, and I think he name dropped The Thing as one of his favorite horror movies, and this scene just felt like that to me. But they all have to eat a clove of garlic to prove they're not a vampire, because that's how Annie gets Stack to leave. Is she throws a jar of pickled garlic in his face, and it like burns him, and he runs out. And so we do the classic, like everybody eat a clove of garlic, similar to the blood test scene in The Thing. And there's people that are resistant, and at this point, Smoke is like, I got no fucks to give at this point. Sorry. But
I'll pull a gun on any one of you that doesn't want to do this.
Mostly the swearing. I wasn't sure if that was all right or not. But but like he's got nothing left at this point. His brother's dead and now a vampire, and he's like, I got no way to mess with anything. And I think it's Perline, who's kind of like doesn't like the taste of garlic and doesn't want to eat it, so he just pulls out the gun. And then Miles is like, "Whoa, man!" And Smoke just smacks him in the face with the gun and is like, "Eat it!" Like, and so she finally does, and she hates it. And then we do get a bit of a comedic relief moment where we finally cut to Delta Slim, Delroy Lindo, who eats it, and you think something's happening, and then it turns out no, he just drank too much and he got him, and he almost got sick.
I love that. I love it so much.
I love that. He's like, I'm fine.
Now,
it's like,
here's
first off, dude. No, you're not. You are surrounded by vampires. You're the opposite of mine right now. But
this movie, Andrew, it's so smart. Okay, so you have this band of survivors inside this building. Vampires cannot come in. They just have to wait it out till daylight. But that's not an interesting movie. So how do we get things going? It does it in such a smart way where no character just does anything stupid. The series of events that leads to the conflict is really well done. And it starts with them finding a dead body. They know everyone inside is a human, yet here's someone in a pool of blood on the ground. One of us must be a vampire. First thing we had to do, get this body out of here before it turns. They throw the body out. They come in. They do the garlic test, but everybody passes. And so that's when they ask, are you sure that was blood? And they go back and check, and I believe it ends up being a bottle of, I don't know, a condiment or liquor or something, but they find an empty bottle. That man was passed out drunk in a pool that looked like blood. So now they realize they've thrown out an innocent person. They open the door. They see that person get killed. Again, they still don't do anything stupid. They don't step out and try to save him when he's getting ravaged. But this is whenever... I keep scrolling back up for character name. This is when Mrs. Chow sees her husband on the outside, who's been turned. They know he's been turned, but he's taunting her, and we realize that the hive mind knows where their daughter is, and they make a threat on her daughter's life. That is when Mrs. Chow starts freaking out. She doesn't want to just sit there till daybreak. She's worried about her daughter, and she becomes... I don't want to use the word hysterical. That's problematic for a number of reasons, but she is enraged, and they are trying to keep her calm. Smoke tries to cover her mouth, but she screams, "Come on in, motherfuckers." So cool. I mean, it's objectively a dumb thing, I guess, but the movie does so much work to sell this character getting to that point where you got to be like, I mean, I get it. Right? And so they all know what's about to happen. They all arm up. They all grab whatever weapons and stakes that they can. And all the vampires can now come in, and we lead to this brawl, which we'll talk about. But again, I just want to take a step back and recognize the amount of work the movie does to organically set this up where it makes sense we would get to this point without anything contrived or a character being stupid. Like the series of events to get here is just so well thought out and well played.
Oh yeah, it's because it's that thing. It's like, just hang out inside, and it's like, okay. Well, and then they very accurately are like, cool. Then what? they're just going to come back for us the next night. Like, it's this reality that, like, cool, we survived one night. It's not, but the reality is you're not just surviving one night. You have to survive all the nights because these guys aren't just going to go away. So, and, you know, it's an emotionally charged moment, but she's finally like, but Grace is finally the one that's like, no, this ends here. Like, it's all or nothing, basically. Which is what it is, because if they survive the night, fantastic. They don't, the next night, they just come right back. It's like like everything's already ruined. Like, they can't reopen the juke.
You gotta be on the run for your entire life. Yeah.
Right. Or, so you do it now or later, basically.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, while it's emotionally charged, it really is the only place to go. There's nothing else you can do here except to be on the run forever. And the moment that she gets now, are we going straight into the fight now? Is that what we're going into?
Yeah, let's jump into this fight.
So Grace, like, immediately, like, jumps out, stabs her vampire converted husband in the chest, and then they both catch on fire. And they just burn to death while she screams at his face while she stakes him. And
we should say her weapon of choice was a Molotov cocktail that she chunks at Remick, who just effortlessly bats it to the side and sets the building on fire. So that's where the fire comes into play. Mm-hmm. So she literally runs through the fire to stab him. She's on fire. And we don't even see it play out in one shot. We cut around to other people fighting and occasionally cut back to her as she screams, putting the stake in. And the last time we see her, I mean, she is like basically Ash, still screaming and killing him so that the vampires won't have the knowledge of her daughter. Like, she sacrifices herself to save her family.
Which I don't know if that's how that works, but it's really cool.
I gotta imagine that's her logic. I guess the movie doesn't explicitly say. I mean, I don't know. What do you think, Andrew? When a vampire dies, does their knowledge leave the hive mind, or they still have like their memories downloaded?
I don't know. It's a good question.
I guess they wouldn't have any incentive to go get her daughter because they're, you know, the parents are dead. But anyway, the point is, she's a wife sacrificing herself for her family.
A very badass way to go out.
Yes,
too.
Yes, very cool.
So this fight ends up unfolding, and it's cool. Like, obviously, we're getting back and forth. We get some Michael B. Jordan on Michael B. Jordan action because, you know, it's what we all came for. We get a lot of it later, but man, this thing still packs in the emotions too, because you get everything going back and forth. Eventually, Annie gets turned by Stack, no less. And she made Smoke promise that if she got turned, he would finish it because she didn't want to turn into one of them. And in that scene where she makes him promise,
so it's been established that they had a child that died. And she says, you have to promise to release me. I've got someone waiting for me on the other side. And so do you. Friend of the show, my wife, tears, bawling. I mean, and me now, like, saying it out loud, like, it's...
Oh, yeah. It's tough.
It's
anyway, and then there's a scene later that calls back to it that we'll get to in a minute. But anyway, she eventually gets turned by Stack, and he's forced to do it. And it was interesting how it played out, because obviously Smoke is just devastated that he has to do this. He hates that he has to do this. But then Mary and Stack are also distraught because all of them being part of this group was the plan. Yeah. And Mary, like, tears out of the building. Like, she's horrified that Smoke would do this because she can't envision why he wants to do it. There's a funny scene earlier where they're trying to get inside and Smoke slams the door on all of them, and Stack, as a vampire, just goes, no vision. Just like upset that his brother just won't see what the goal is here. But man, that scene where he has to do that was just absolutely devastating, just horrible. It's like and we've seen scenes like that a dozen times where somebody's forced to finish off their loved one or something. Like, you know, we all remember the dog scene from I Am Legend. But it's... Oh,
I haven't seen that. What happens to the dog, Andrew?
I ain't fucking telling you. But you ask somebody else, man. Go ask your wife that one. Anyway, this scene is then so we have this big moment play out, which is this emotional gut punch. And then it's Delta Slim that's trying to give them all some extra time to get out of the building and run to safety. And he sacrifices himself. He slices up his own arm, and he basically says curtain call for Delta Slim. And basically distracts all these vampires so that they have a second to get away. And even that, I was just like, that's cool. I was like, that's badass. So like, he's like, this is it. He's like, it's that realization that he's like, I'm old, I'm done, there's nothing left here. I'm going to do this so that you all have a chance. And then, of course, obviously, when they open that door, Stack is waiting on the other side, as well as Remick, and it causes even more fights. And then eventually, Perline gets turned through this fight as well. It is just, and that's the other thing that as this movie unfolded, I realized, like, truly, nobody's safe. Nobody. The only person comes out of this is Sammy, because you see him in what you would assume is the aftermath, the beginning of the movie. This movie's told in media res, where the beginning is Sammy rolling up to the church after, assumedly, all this has happened. He's got the cuts on his face and everything. So the only knowledge you have is that he has escaped this. So nobody else, you have no idea what's happening to anybody else. And the realization is nobody else makes it out of this. Well, maybe. We'll talk more in a second. But that whole bar fight, sawmill fight, whatever you want to call it, is just really, really cool. You get tons of just action. And then Remick starts taking on this more monstrous appearance as this all unfolds. And it's just really cool how it's not like, we're not talking Gary Oldman and Dracula here, but still just very unsettling and otherworldly.
The design reminded me a lot, especially as the fingers grow and get pointy, of the comic American Vampire, which I love and I really thought was going to make the next big thing, but I'm sure an adaptation of that is going to blow up at some point. But yeah, that had the sort of bigger transformation like we see here. Their eyes are super cool when they glow red. I mean, that's just, especially in the darkness.
That first scene with Remick where he turns the couple and like her husband's on the floor like in his own blood and Remick's just in the chair and she starts screaming and he just goes, oh, he's gonna be just fine, and like it cuts to him and he's got the teeth with the red eyes. I was like, oh, I don't like you. You make me uncomfortable. But yeah, and so this whole fight is just really, really cool. Anything else you want to talk about the fight before we kind of get into the finale of this sequence here?
Well, when the fight starts, I just want to say, I don't know where we're at runtime-wise, but I feel like we're not that deep in the movie, and I know it's like an over 2+ hour movie, but whenever she says, come on in, and we've got, 10 humans inside and 50 vampires storming inside, I'm like, well, this is the end of the movie. Like, how... They have no chance. Like, I can't believe we're here. I mean, for that reason, amongst many others, like, I'm on the edge of my seat. Like, how do they possibly fend off this many vampires? And the truth is, they don't. Most of them die. Delroy Lindo gets a great sacrifice, a fun death. We got the two twins facing off upstairs, and the resolution to that, is kind of revealed later. I guess we can talk about the finale of this movie.
So throughout the course of all this, Perline gets turned to the point that you basically, at this point, have Miles and Smoke, and that's it. Nobody else has survived at this point. Miles jumps down and tries to get away, but then he's immediately attacked by Remick.
Who, flies behind him. Like, I don't want to use the word subtle for the vampire stuff, because it's not subtle, but it's used sparingly. I think we see him fly twice. Like, we see him fly after Mary, and we just see him start to lift off, and then it cuts away. Their supernatural powers are used so sparingly that has such impact whenever we see something as simple as a character flying through the air. I love the restraint used on that.
It is the restraint, because it's that less is more type thing, that when they do something like that, it's a big deal. Because so much of the movie is just kind of grounded grounded vampire movie, but not the right word, but you guys know what I mean. They keep everything purposely kind of surface level. When something extraordinary happens, it means that much more. But not being a spot monkey, man. Oh, I shouldn't use that term. Oh no, he's white though. It's fine.
Jesus Christ, dude. I'm not editing this podcast. Let's stay it in.
That's fine, but it was a troubling thing to say until I realized it was about Remick. I didn't want to cause any issues there. He's not doing, 17 Canadian destroyers and then doing something and I'm supposed to think it's a big deal. He waits to use the Canadian destroyer. But
yes. A wrestling
it's,
term for anybody who's not
yes,
familiar
but
with Spot Monkey.
But anyway, so we get to this final sequence where the sun is now coming up too. So I don't know if these guys just lost track of time or what. But I guess they.
Okay, can I go ahead and pause this? and I love this movie. This isn't like a complaint or whatever, but it is the one thing that had me scratching my head because we know that, or at least we know by the end of the movie, that Mary and Stack got out of there before the final fight. They fled. But all the other vampires are fighting literally until the break of dawn. And it just so happens that Remick gets killed by Preacher Boy smashing a guitar in his head and then Smoke stabbing him in the heart from behind. But had that not happened, he still would have died in like 30 seconds when the sun came up. Like, all the other vampires don't leave. I think the clue to this... I mean, I don't quite understand this. I would love your take. But there is the part where Preacher Boy hits him in the head with a guitar, and again, the silver burns him, and all the other vampires grab their head, like they feel the pain. So there's maybe something about him fighting makes all of them stay and fight, but then again, you had Stack and Mary run away. So, Andrew, I don't quite understand this part.
I assumed they were just going to go inside the bar.
It's on fire. It's burning. It's even still standing at that point.
It wasn't a second ago. I assume because all that happens and the bar gets lit on fire at the same time this big fight starts. I assumed the plan was to just get inside and just hide out there until it was dark again.
Okay.
Deal with the racist if you have to. But sir, that delivery is just so. It was so perfect. But anyway. I do love this final fight. Miles is basically fighting for his life at this point. We find out how his guitar gets smashed because we know it gets smashed at the beginning of the movie. He does bash it over Remick's face, and the kind of steel of the steel guitar gets wedged in his brain. Shakes that off real quick. No cell, classic vampires. But it's a moment where it's about to seem like it's about to get bad. And as we're cutting back and forth between this and the smokestack fight, but we find out that this actual mojo bag actually is protecting him because Stack can't bite him. And there's just this kind of standoff. And then when it looks desperate, you see Smoke appears and stakes Remick. And that hurts all of them. And then they all burst into flames. And Smoke and Sammy survive. And everybody else is perished.
Is there a way to read this? I'm genuinely asking. Where it's not the mojo bag, it's the fact that he knows it's his brother, or at least that there's a question mark to whether or not the mojo bag works or not. Like, you can believe in it if you want to. It might all,
I don't
kind of leave
really
it ambiguous.
know how you can read it otherwise.
Or do you think it's literal the mojo bag stopping him?
She purposely like recharges it when he's in the place earlier in the movie, and then. Well, I'm going to talk about this now, because the scene that ends up being inadvertently very powerful to me is, I think the scene's important because it tells Smoke that it works. Because he doesn't know it works until that point. That's the moment that Smoke realizes, oh, this thing actually is protecting me. So what does he do before he fights all the racists at the end? He takes it off. Because he knows there's people on the other side waiting for him now. And he doesn't want to do this without them anymore.
Okay, that's the right read. Yeah.
That, and like the first time I watched it, he like pulled it off and yanked it aside. Because if I were him, I'd be like, yeah, I'm done with all this. But then you realize that it's because, one, it's the opposite. He knows it works now. And he doesn't want it to. Because he doesn't want to be protected anymore. He wants it to be done. He wants it to be over. And he wants to move on to the next thing. And, and because that's what was a little interesting is we're getting to this scene where now Remick and all of them have been dispatched, which is this awesome scene where they all get lit on fire. They all turn to ash. But what has been revealed throughout the course of many of these conversations with Remick is that the racist member that sold them the sawmill is coming back in the morning with all his buddies to kill them. Like, that is made clear to them that this is the plan because the first two people Remick turns were in the local clan group. So he sends Sammy away, and you see Sammy arrive at the church, and that segues back into that whole thing. But then he prepares to fight all these guys, to fight these racists. Because there's the prominent scene in the trailer is Smoke using the Tommy gun, like mowing it down. And the whole time I'm watching this movie, I'm like, that hasn't happened. Because I thought he was going to like mow down all the vampires when they were like on fire and burning, and he was going to be like, all right, suck this, and just finish them all off. But then like, and then Hogwood and all his racists pull up, and I was like, oh, we're going to end this movie with him just killing some racists now too. This is the best movie ever made. I was like, this is the greatest movie of all time. But that small bit of him just pulling off the Mojo bag, throwing it aside, just because now he's done. It's finished. He doesn't have any, obviously Sammy's still alive, but at this point, what he's seen, what he's experienced, he doesn't, it's kind of a visual representation of I really don't want to be around here anymore. And so what's the last thing he does? He gets rid of all the racists in the area first. Well, all the overt racists. I'm sure there's still many left, but, yeah, and like, so that was to me, it's like, I was like, oh, like the scene where like the guys are running away and he just tosses a grenade into their car. I was like, yeah, dude, screw these guys. Like, excellent. But, and then obviously he gets shot through the stomach at one point, and it's just him and the final racist left. And he has the moment where he sees Annie and their child, and the racist does a bunch of stuff, and then he does the Inglourious Bastards and just empties the whole clip into.
That's exactly what friend of the show, my wife, referenced. She's like, it was a very Eli Roth Inglourious Bastards moment where he just pumps him.
Yep.
Pumps it full of lead.
Pumps his guts full of lead. But
yeah, I gotta see this movie again. I love that what you said there about the bag. That is very powerful. There's a lot of this movie has so much payoff. Going back to the very first time you see Stack and Smoke on screen together, like I said, he's showing off because it's Michael B. Jordan interacting with Michael B. Jordan, and what's happening is Stack is rolling a cigarette to pass it to Smoke. Now, at the end of the movie, when Smoke no longer has his brother, he tries to roll a cigarette, but he has tremors in his hands, we can assume from PTSD after the war, and he is unable to roll a cigarette without his brother there.
His brother always rolled them. That's the whole thing, is his brother always rolled the cigarettes. Smoke was never able to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, PTSD from the war, not from
throughout
the
whole movie, they established that his hands shake and that Smoke is always the one that did that.
Yes. I'm just saying we've got the bookends here where we are introduced to them with him rolling a cigarette for his brother, and ends with him trying to do it on his own, and he can't. Now that he no longer has a brother. So from the moment she said, we have someone waiting for us on the other side, I'm like, well, I know something that's going to happen in this movie. It feels weird to call it like a payoff, but like what's going to happen. And when it does, man, it hits, and I love the way that it's done, because he is like slowly dying. So he falls to the ground, and he just sees his wife and child beside him. I think it's beautiful and interesting that she used to have her like nurturing, like she's breastfeeding the child, she's nurturing the baby, like she is just having like a real life bond with him. It's very cool. But he looks over and sees them. She tells him to put out his cigarette because you don't want to get smoke on the baby. It's just what I love about the scene is the way we are blending the realms, like the veil is coming down, because like him smoking a cigarette in real life shouldn't affect their spirits. But he can also turn back and see the racist man in front of him dying. Like he is, for a moment, existing on both planes. And it's shown to us in such a beautiful way that I really loved. And again, friend of the show, my wife, crying hysterically. I may have shed some tears here too. It's definitely giving my son
I cried a lot, man.
A big hug.
I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, it's
I'm really glad there was. I don't expect Coogler to be the kind of director to do this, but he never shows like Hogwood's perspective, where it looks like he's holding nothing, or he looks like he's talking to nobody. And I always hate when they do that. When there's like that bridge between the scenes. Like the only attention given to Hogwood is the exact attention that needs to be given, and it's Michael B. Jordan making sure the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan is dead. First off, the fact they call them Grand Dragons, what giant dorks.
Stupid.
But But yeah, like when he turns and he looks, and then the guy's like, "I have money," and it's like, nah, just picks up the gun and, like I said, pulls the old Pulls the old Home Alone, pumps his guts full of lead. But it's first off just deeply satisfying. But then you see that Smoke gets the ending that he wants, at this point, which is that I'm kind of done with all of this. Because like you think about like what's his life after this? There is no life after this. Like his brother's gone, his wife is gone, his kid is gone, his entire community has been decimated by this. He take care of all the races. Like what? And then he knows obviously that they robbed all the people up in Chicago, and those people are eventually going to catch up. He knows that, and he knew they were already underwater from everything. Like at this point, it's like, all right, finish off these guys, and whatever happens. I don't know that he seemed much more open to being like, this is the end for me after that. And it hits. It works. And I just love that in a movie about vampires, Ryan Coogler still found a way for Michael B. Jordan to kill a bunch of racists. So
I love that we get badass moments. We get emotional moments. We get moments like when Cornbread is taking a piss, and every time he hears a noise, he stops peeing and looks around and then starts peeing. It's like almost like Austin Powers level of stopping and starting. Very funny. And the fact, again, that literal potty humor can work, and alongside all these other things we're seeing is just incredible. And a movie like this can have a scene set in the 90s, I almost said modern times, it's not quite, but set in the 90s, and it doesn't feel jarring to suddenly see Michael B. Jordan dressed in Haley Stanfield dressed in like 90s getup, and it just works. And then, we've got, Buddy Guy as Preacher Boy, and we kind of discussed this already. Something I find really interesting, and this is one of those things that I'm kind of still chewing on, is Preacher Boy in the 90s has that moment where he's like, I still wake up paralyzed, having nightmares of that night. But the funny thing is, the day leading up to it was still the best day of my life. And
we haven't talked about the setup for this scene, though. I do actually want to talk about how that happens, because I think this is just very interesting how this happened to me, because it's in the middle of the credits. Like this is not the end of the movie. This is literally like a full on 5-minute mid-credit scene.
Yeah, we've got the credits starting, and we hear Preacher Boy playing, and we're kind of cutting back and forth between his concert,
between him and this older version of him. They say I think it's Chicago in October of '92.
Yeah.
And he's just playing, because the whole big thing is at the end of the sequence in the church at the end when Sammy kind of goes in and his dad's like, drop the guitar, son, and then we cut to him driving away, and he's not going to do it. But then it's after the show, and old Sammy is just sitting at the bar, and his guy comes in and says, hey, man, there's 2 people that want to talk to you. I told them we're closed, but I still want to talk. And he's like, yeah, let him in. And then he hears the doorman say, yeah, come on in. And that almost triggers something for Sammy, where he looks at the door, and then what's happening at this point. The audience has been clued in, and then what walks through the door is Haley Steinfeld first, and then Michael B. Jordan in full-on Kid and Play-esque 90s stylings. And I just, again, I love that Michael B. Jordan made a Jim Crow era South movie with vampires, where Michael B. Jordan still got to kill a whole bunch of racists, and then Michael B. Jordan found a way to get to dress like this in the movie and have it not seem jarring and out of place, because it's such a specific look, but it's the 90s. And I love this. I love this scene, because I did have a friend that was like, I don't know if I needed that. And I was like, I liked it a lot, though, because it's Sammy at the end. It's implied that he's basically not long now, because Stack and Mary are there, and it's mostly just Stack and Sammy kind of having one last moment, which is kind of how it was. We find out that Smoke couldn't kill Stack, and the only thing that basically happened was that Smoke couldn't do it, and basically made Stack promise to leave Sammy alone. And then the implication, which is why he was not part of the final, everybody getting kind of obliterated, and then Mary ran away after they killed Annie permanently. And so that's why the 2 of them weren't part of the larger group. And because he asks how. It's, they have a little bit of the Dylan moment where he's like, we have every one of your albums. And he's like, I like the real stuff, not that electric shit you did later. I like the real stuff. And then he asks him, he's like, do you still have the real stuff? And he pulls out an old steel guitar, and he plays that same song he played in the car, which is a great scene earlier in the movie where Stack is kind of like, can you play? And so he plays the Traveling song, and Stack is like enamored. He's like, whoa, like this kid is
I
good.
love his
He's
reaction, the shock of like, wow.
Like just this, not just can you play, you are really good. And it just rekindles that moment between them. And they actually, because he even asks, like, we could make you one of us. You could play tour forever. And he like smells him. And he's like, there's not long now, is it? And he's kind of, and Sammy says, like, I think I've had enough of this. Yeah. And why wouldn't you at that point? At a certain point, I think you have had enough of it. And, but they get that one last moment together. And for me, it works because free from Remick, the driving desire of what Remick wanted is gone from them. So they're not really bound by what Remick's desires were anymore, which is why I think they were able to just go off. But he has that moment, like you said, of just like, before the sun went down, that was the best day of my life. And
and then Stack agrees with him, and he very pointedly says it's the only time he felt free. And I'm trying to remember, this movie uses flashbacks very well. I'm, on the whole, not the biggest fan of like repeating dialogue whenever that dialogue becomes relevant again. This movie does that a few times. And then, like you said, when he hears them playing, we see a shot of them in the car again together. And I don't remember if it's here or whenever Smoke is dying, where we see flashbacks to stuff we never saw the first time, like them renovating the sawmill that day to get ready for the party. But in any case, I love the use of flashbacks. They have such an emotional punch, but that's something I've been chewing on, where they say like that day is the only time they felt free. And I think there's definitely, it can speak to like being a minority, being black in this country, especially in that era where black people are technically given their freedom, but truly not allowed to be free. But it also works on the sort of supernatural level where he is trapped in this body as a vampire and he's not free there. Like it's got levels to it that I just ruminate on and chew on. And it's just so interesting for, even Sammy at this point in his life to still look at that day as the best day of his life. And,
well, for Sammy, I think it's a tale of two lives, because he has a life before that moment and the life after that moment. And no matter what success came before, I guarantee you he would have preferred the life where that night didn't happen to him.
Yeah.
Because who wouldn't? And I like what you said. He says it's the day he only ever truly felt free. But he says there's three things. It was the last time he saw Smoke, because obviously Smoke didn't survive the rest of that day. And it's the last time he saw the sun. And then he says the last time he truly felt free. And they do that montage of them turning the sawmill into the juke joint. And that is not shown during the movie. I believe that's shown here. And you can see that this was a group working together to build something for themselves. This was going to be their thing. And Remick, no matter what he did, no matter what his intentions were, no matter what he said he was going to do, ultimately Remick took that from them. It wasn't Hogwood and his guys that took it from them. They would have if they had, been there the next morning. But Remick took it from them first. And that's kind of the irony of Remick's character. He's a man. Remick could be 1,000 years old, witnessed British occupation of Ireland, and lived through that, and believed that he was building these communities that would be free from such a thing. But in reality, all he did was build a community that just did it even worse. And he took that place from them, and he took those moments from them. And that's why he got a guitar to the face and then died painfully, because he should. It's a potent thing. It's a potent moment, and it works. There's moments even in that scene where I'm like, is this a little bit too far? But I think it all sticks together and it holds in, and it works.
I think is the last point I want to make here. I do believe Ryan Coogler has cited Dusk Till Dawn specifically as an influence, and I think the biggest comparison you can bring between those two movies is they're both movies that have a story happening that is itself complete and compelling, and then vampires get thrown in. quite literally, it is like I've been describing it as like a movie spills over into this film. It's like the end of Blazing Saddles where we run through different sets. So in this movie, it happens like we just we just cut to Native Americans chasing down a vampire. I mean, he's burning in the sunlight. We can put together what he is. He seeks refuge in this house. Those people don't want to let the Native Americans in to finish him. To finish the vampire off. So they're like, sun's going down, let's get out of here. We never see the Native Americans again. They're never talked about again. That is a movie unto itself. Like, that is a spinoff I would be all about. I love that it's Native Americans who are protecting the land, who are protecting this country from evil, or trying to drive them out. It's a wonderful idea. And I love just that we get, I don't know, 2 minutes, Andrew, of these Native American, like, if that.
It's very
But
short.
in your head, you can see an entire movie, like an entire storyline. But that one just collides into this one. You know, that character of Remick just jumps out of that movie and into this story and screws it all up. I love the concept. Again, the fact that it works is incredible. It's awesome. There's 2 spin-off movies I would love to see. It's the Native American Vampire Hunters, and it's Stack and Marry through the ages. Any time period. I would love a full story.
I would
fleshed out
also
of
watch
one
the Smokestack movie about them
in Chicago.
Yeah,
that would also be awesome.
Watch that too. Yeah, you know, what's Stack got to say about Jimi Hendrix? Was Stack Jimi Hendrix? It's, you know,
I think that might be a bridge too far, but okay.
At this point, Ryan Coogler could tell me literally anything, and I'd be like, all right, let's go.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, I'll be there. Be there day one. This movie is just great. It's everything I love about movies. There are movies I have enjoyed this year for sure. Like I said, I mentioned Companion. I've mentioned Novocaine. I've mentioned Black Bag. We mentioned Mickey 17, and I've liked all of these things very straight. There was even like a rom-com meta-aware slasher that came out called Hard Eyes that I had a blast with. It was just all of the rom-com tropes mixed into a slasher movie, and the killer wears a mask with light-up hard eyes. So, like, that's 10 out of 10 what I'm about. And, of course, it's not getting a 4K release on originally because Life is Pain. Thankfully, this one is. But this movie is just a whole different thing in itself. It is the kind of thing that movies exist, the stories that movies exist to tell. And if you were sitting on the fence about it, you're thinking you need to kind of wait, I would strongly encourage you to watch this on as big a screen as possible. If it's Dolby, if it's whatever Cinemark or Regal do, if it's IMAX, whatever it is, I would really recommend you get out there and watch this, because this is something that needs to be seen by as many people. The statement regarding the success of this movie, I would like it to be as undeniable as possible, because, you know, people talk about the post-superhero movies. Like, what is the genre post-superheroes? Because for the last, almost 20 years now, superheroes have been, more than 20 years in a lot of ways. I mean, the MCU takes it to another level, but from pretty much the moment X-Men hit in 2000, superheroes were this viable blockbuster thing. And they've been that way. And obviously, there's been some chinks in the armor lately, but it's still making money. Like, obviously, stuff like Deadpool and Wolverine still makes $1 billion. Spider-Man No Way Home makes $1 billion. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 makes $800 million. So there's still successes there to be noted that, you know, the genre's not done yet. We're not talking Westerns here, where the Westerns just, like, completely fell out of favor. But, and a lot of people hope that stuff like Sinners is the next thing. Just an era of auteur-driven original pieces, similar to the 70s. You know, the kind of new Hollywood era of the Francis Ford Coppolas and the Martin Scorseses and the Michael Ciminos that were all kind of setting out to make their own marks after kind of making these successful smaller pictures. The William Friedkins of the like. And obviously that ran into some trouble when they started making bloated, insane movies like Heaven's Gate. But people kind of hope stuff like Sinners is the template for the future, and I don't know that it needs to be one or the other, but if it is going to shift away from superheroes to something else, I certainly hope it's more movies like this.
Yeah, I think, truthfully, I don't want superhero movies to end. I love them. I love franchises. What I want is variety. There is room in the market for all the stuff to exist alongside it. For some reason, it seems the industry wants to only focus on the one thing they think is most bankable. I say for some reason, capitalism is the reason, but from an audience perspective, like give me everything. There's room for it. There's an audience for it. There's a market for it. Movies like this are proving it. Yeah, I want it all. Is that too much to ask for, Andrew? I don't think so.
I wouldn't think so, but I've been told different things. So I don't know, man. I just love movies, man. I watch a lot of them. I watch a lot of them, but very few stick with me in the way that this did. Like this made an immediate impression. Like I actually agreed to see it a second time before I'd seen it the first time, but I had a hunch that at bare minimum I was not going to mind watching this movie again. And in reality, I was then eager to watch this movie again. And I'm now hoping to see it a third time, maybe a fourth time. Like this is a movie that I think if I have an extra hour on an afternoon, bro, let's go watch Sinners again. I may very legitimately buy this movie digitally before the physical copy comes out just because I want to watch it again. I might buy a whole new TV just so that I have a nicer TV to watch it on.
Okay. All right.
I got the Costco membership, man. Might as well put it to good use.
I got to say some credits and get us out of here, but I can't believe I didn't bring this up during casting, but he ends up getting this blues legend to play the older preacher boy, but that wasn't the plan originally. He had actually tried to bring in Danny Glover to play the aged version of preacher boy, but it just wasn't working, and it was Danny Glover had to break it to writing. It was I don't know how far they got, but Danny Glover had to eventually be like, look, I can't actually play the guitar, like this wouldn't be able to shoot it the way you shot everything else in the movie, like would it be believable? And he had to break the news to Coogler himself. It's reported that he just put his hand on his shoulder and said, "I'm not your buddy, guy." Maybe the hardest thing I've ever had to do to keep a straight face. Andrew was literally Googling, fact-checking me as I was telling that story. Until we got to the punchline. Andrew is now dead. He fell backwards out of his chair. This may be the last episode of Best of the Rest. For that, I apologize. Was it worth it? Yes, I think we stuck the landing there. As Andrew recovers, let me get us out of here. Thanks for listening. We are wrapping up Nick Cage month. And then as we move into the next month, we're going to be doing Fake Bands month. And if you want to see the lineup for that, you can do so by hopping into our Discord. As always, the link in the show notes. And remember, maybe not every movie is great,
but all movies have greatness.
Thank you to Mark Benavides for singing our theme song. You can check him out on Instagram at NotThatMarkAnthony. Thanks to Mitch for the music. Follow him on Twitter at I'mABiggyBoy. Check our show notes for that SoundCloud link. Check out our store on TeePublic for some Best of the Rest merch. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. That's the only way that we grow. Follow us on social media at BOTRcast. Thank you.